Well, little childlings, we're going to do a new kind of writing this week, and you can see the title there. It is explanation writing. So this is writing that explains something. It's as simple as that. If you have in the house a book that is non-fiction, maybe you've got one about animals, or maybe you've got one about the earth, you might actually have one that has something about volcanoes. This is the kind of writing that we're going to do. Okay, now obviously we're just going to write a few paragraphs, but believe it or not, there are people in the world who've written whole books about volcanoes. We're not going to write a whole book, don't worry. So the first thing that we're going to look at, what is an explanation? It's non-fiction writing, as we've been doing all term, and we're going to explain how things work or the way things are. Okay, and in this particular one, I suppose it's a combination of both, in terms of it's not like volcanoes work, it's just what they do. So I suppose it's more the way things are. So we're going to introduce the subject in the opening. So that would be a very short paragraph, 2 sentences maybe at the beginning. Then logical steps to explain in simple, clear language. You can use headings and subheadings. Some people did that in their discursive essays. And we're going to use words that we've used before: first, next, then, or, because, therefore, as well as, things like that. So you should be able to explain daily routines of things that you like. That's not where we're going today. How things work. That's not where we're going today. How the human body works. That's not where we're going today. Processes that happen in nature. Bingo. So a volcano is something that happens in nature. It's not something that people, human beings, have any control over. And it might also be why something has happened. So it might that would be part of it. Why do volcanoes erupt? Depending on which way you want to look at it. So before writing, we need to understand the learning intention and the success criteria. So our learning intention is to write an explanation of volcanoes. The success criteria we'll continue to look at as we go. The purpose of your writing is to explain volcanoes. We'll look at a model text. We'll look at the way the author has written it, or the author's craft. We'll highlight the key features and we'll visualise. Okay, so our learning intention is to write a clear and detailed explanation of a volcano eruption. Our success criteria: you title your work appropriately. So you're not going to call it Sunshine in Glasgow, because that's got nothing to do with volcanoes, for 2 reasons. The sun has nothing to do with volcanoes, and Glasgow has nothing to do with volcanoes. You're going to state the purpose of your explanation clearly in your introduction. So as I said, a short paragraph to start with. Then you're going to explain the process clearly by describing what, when, why, how, etc. And it's a good idea not to make that one long paragraph, but maybe to split it into 2 or 3 shorter paragraphs. So we want it organised in a logical sequence, and if you do that, that will help to decide where your paragraph breaks should be. Use subject-specific vocabulary, so words like lava, molten, rocks, spewing. You don't want to use things like cold, nice. Well, you can use nice, but these are nothing to do with volcanoes. Again, that's what we call technical language. And then generalised information and link cause and effect. So that means that you're not going to talk about necessarily a specific volcano, although you can, but generalized information means this is what happens with all volcanoes, okay? And you might want to talk about tectonic plates, which is the kind of cause of the volcano eruption. Okay, reasons for explanations. So people might want to talk about how computers work, how does a spider spin a web, why do living things need food, why do some things float and others sink. You might have other ideas, which we can, if you want to feed back to me, I'm quite happy to use one for a future essay, if you get back to me. Explanation text. So we'll look at the model text, we'll look at the way it's written and the features of the text. So this model text is how to fly a hot air balloon. Now this is, you can see, before we even start, it's in 3 paragraphs. A short paragraph and 2 longer paragraphs. What this one does not have is a clear conclusion. But let's read it through anyway. A hot air balloon consists of a basket, 4 big gas tanks, a burner, and the balloon or envelope, which are all needed to make it fly. So your essay, you would want a very brief overview of a volcano. So a volcano is a tall mountain. There are some that are extinct, like the ones in Scotland, and there are some that are active, and you might name some countries. There are a lot of countries that have active volcanoes. Probably the closest one to us is Iceland, but Japan has a lot of volcanoes. New Zealand has a lot of volcanoes. Hawaii, which is in the USA, has volcanoes. So you might want to mention some that are still active and what the difference between an extinct volcano and an active volcano are. That would be as much as you might want to include in your introduction. Okay, so the first word then of the next paragraph is the word first. First, the pilot puts 4 nylon poles into sockets on top of the basket. Then the burner is put on top of the poles. Next, the cables are connected to the burner frame. The cables go under the basket in order to hold everything together. After this, the hoses from the full gas tanks are connected to the burner so that she can test it. I don't know who she is. Next, 2 people hold the mouth of the balloon open while it is filled with cold air from the fan until it is quite fat and tight. Now for the difficult bit. The pilot lies on the ground, half in the basket. How bizarre is that? The gas burner is turned on and the flame is pointed into the mouth of the balloon. This is so that the balloon stands up, slowly stands up. When the pilot is ready to go, the air in the balloon is heated up a bit more. This results in the air in the balloon, that says to be hot enough, I would have said being hot enough to get the balloon to rise off the ground. And I would have added a final paragraph there, something like, now the pilot can take his balloon wherever he wants, or wherever the wind blows, or something like that. It's probably how I would have a rounding off paragraph. I don't think that is complete, but that is a very interesting story about hot air balloons. That the pilot lies on the ground. I guess his feet are in the basket and his arms are on the ground, and as the balloon starts to rise, the basket must turn itself the right way up, and then he's in it and he's the right way up. Very strange. I did not know that. I assumed that the balloon was heated up, and while it was still on the ground, the pilot jumped in. What do I know? Okay, so the features of explanation writing. A title to tell you what is being explained. Now, I'm not going to tell you what your title should be, but it should have the word volcano or the word volcanoes in it. A general opening statement, so that would be a short paragraph at the top. Then a series of logical steps. Everything should be written in the present tense, unless you want to have one or two sentences talking about a specific volcano that has erupted. When I was young, a volcano called Mount St. Helens erupted, and that was in the USA, and I have family in the USA, and they brought me back some ash from the volcano. So that might be something that if I was writing, I would want to include in my explanation. Not that I would mention, I would be so personal, but I might say in 19 whatever, I don't know what year it was, Mount St. Helens in the USA erupted, causing destruction all over. That's as much as I would say. I wouldn't mention that I personally had ash from it, because then it's not an explanation. That becomes then a recount, and this is not a recount. Okay, so you're written in simple present tense, using connectives, then, after, later, and casual connectives, so, because, when. Now you might want to do a diagram or pictures which would have labels. So for example, if you're going to draw your volcano, you might point to the lava, you might point to the smoke, you might point to different parts of the mountain. And here is how you would lay it out: your title, your introduction, your paragraphs. That says in time order, so you would probably want to start with movement underground, the earth begins to heat up, the rocks begin inside the volcano begin to melt. Eventually they are so hot that they push up beyond the rocks that are already there, more rocks melting, and that we call that molten lava when the rocks have melted, and they push up and push up, and eventually they come spewing out the top. You might have a better word than that. And the lava comes down the outside and can be very destructive to anything that's nearby. I'm sure if you go on YouTube, you will be able to find, maybe I'll have a look myself to see if I can find some videos to show you of volcanoes erupting and a bit of an explanation of it. That's exactly what I'm going to do actually. Okay, so during writing, you want to be thinking about your learning intention and success criteria. You want to be visualizing. You can stop and discuss with somebody how it's going. Use a planning grid or a mind map, which I'll send you. And I should say, you don't need to use them, but they can be helpful. And you don't need to show them to me. Look back at the model text. Look at your planning grid. Look at use word banks, use dictionaries. Check your technical targets. Stop and check that your writing makes sense, and remember who your audience is. So here we're going to plan our own explanation about writing a volcano erupting. Look, there's a picture. You could draw a picture a bit like that at the end. So remember, our explanation needs to include these. So it needs a title, What would be, this is saying think, pair and share. I'm afraid that's something you have to do on your own, unless somebody at home wants to think, pair and share with you. What would be a good title for our explanation? You wouldn't say how volcanoes work, but maybe why do volcanoes explode? What happens inside a volcano? Are volcanoes dangerous? There's a whole lot. Here's some. Why do volcanoes erupt? What makes volcanoes erupt? What causes volcanoes to erupt? What would be a good introduction? Here's some choices. A volcano is a powerful force in nature. A volcanic eruption is one of the most powerful natural disasters. The fierce eruption of a volcano is a mighty force in nature. Okay, now here is a diagram taking you around how a volcano works. Now look, you'll notice it's a cycle. The arrows continue right the way through. So let's start at the top right. Over time, after several eruptions, the rock builds up and a volcano forms. Magma, now magma is the sort of golden rocks that are under the ground, rises through the cracks or weaknesses in the Earth's crust. Pressure builds up inside the Earth. When the pressure is released through plates moving, magma explodes to the surface, causing a volcanic eruption. The lava from the eruption cools to form a new crust, and you can see inside there are layers. That is from previous eruptions. And look, you can actually see that there are two eruption sites, a big one at the top and a smaller one to the right. And then it goes back over time. After several eruptions, the rock builds up and a volcano forms, so on, so on. So it just gets bigger and bigger. So read over your work. Have you been using your planning? Have you met your technical targets? Does your writing make sense? Is your writing meeting the success criteria? Do you need to look back at the model text? And then finally, a conclusion. Now, as I said, I wasn't impressed with the conclusion about the hot air balloons. So now is your time to think of your own conclusion. Volcanic eruptions can be shocking and dangerous events which may cause damage to buildings or even take people's lives. Volcanoes are powerful forces of nature which can cause devastating effects if they erupt. A volcanic eruption is one of the most powerful and dangerous natural disasters that exist. Now, the introductions and conclusions that are here and titles that are here, you are welcome to use them, but it really would be much better if you were able to think of them for yourselves. Okay? You're more than welcome, but maybe try and put them into your own words. So when you're finished, check to see if you've achieved the learning intention, check your technical targets, ask someone at home to read it over, read or discuss feedback with your family, and then publish your writing, i.e. send it to me on Seesaw. You can proofread your work. That means checking it for mistakes. Go over it carefully. It's really helpful to read it aloud. That can help you find if sentences don't make sense because you've missed a word or you've added an extra word. Check your work against the success criteria. Look at the tools for writing checklist and edit your work before handing it in. Okay, here's another here's some more helpful information with a key at the bottom. So first, heat from beneath the Earth's, oh there's a title, sorry I missed that. The volcano is a powerful force in nature. First, heat from beneath the Earth's surface melts solid rock into a hot mixture of gas and liquid called magma. The gas-filled magma is lighter than the unmelted rock. That means it doesn't weigh as much, and therefore it wants to move up. This causes the magma to rise towards the surface, melting gaps in the rock as it rises. The magma then enters the magma chamber. So that is a part of the volcano, the magma chamber. Since a region of magma would be hardened after a past eruption, the magma continues to push and melt its way upward. It pushes through channels of weak, fractured rock. Now, from our point of view, the rock wouldn't appear weak or fractured, but it's weak and fractured because the pressure pushing up the magma is so strong, much stronger than if you or I were to just jump on the rock. So the fractured rock consisting of hardened magma, so that's hardened from the previous eruption. Eventually the magma and gas push up to the top of the volcano and blast up through the opening called the central vent. Volcano eruptions can be shocking and dangerous events which may cost lives or cause damage to buildings. So that would be a very short how volcanoes work. I would want from you probably another paragraph on top of that. And there's a key there that tells us, so the words in red are the introductory statement. The words in yellow are the technical vocabulary. And it is good to keep a note of those words because these are words that you can use in yours. The orange is the connectives or openers. The green shows us the present tense. The blue is the third person pronouns. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about it. And the violet at the bottom is the conclusion, the statement that sums everything up. Okay,